Hello and welcome to the training on preparing a successful application in response to the LASER PULSE Request for Application or RFA. My names are Betty Bugusu and I'm the Technical Director for LASER PULSE based at Purdue University. LASER PULSE stands for Long-Term Assistance and Services for Research, Partners for University-Led Solution Engine. Occasionally, I will refer to LASER PULSE as LASER. At the end of this training, we expect all applicants to be able to, number one, understand the key requirements for LASER PULSE applications. Number two, become aware of and avoid common mistakes made in applications. And number three, prepare a successful application in response to LASER PULSE RFA. In the next couple of slides, I will provide an overview on LASER PULSE RFAs, including key requirements for applications. Let's start with the information regarding the RFA. First, it's important to note that the RFA calls for research and associated research translation applications that are focused on development challenges within identified sectors in the specified region or country. The RFA places emphasis on embedded research translation, a key concept under LASER that is defined as an iterative co-design process among academics, practitioners, and other stakeholders in which research is intentionally applied to a development challenge. In other words, research translation must be embedded across all phases of the project, from co-designing to implementation. LASER requires all submitted applications to be written in English. LASER also expects to award 4 to 6 applications for $1 million to be implemented over a period of 12 to 24 months. Each award will be funded at a maximum of $250,000. In other words, each award cannot exceed $250,000. Therefore, it's important for applicants to keep this in mind as they develop their budgets. In order for an application to be considered successful under LASER PULSE RFAs, it must have the following characteristics. Number one, it must incorporate collaboration between researchers and translation partner or partners to ensure that the proposed research can and will be applied as a solution to the identified development challenge. Examples of translation partners are non-governmental organizations, government entities, and private sector enterprises. Number two, the application must outline anticipated intermediate and long-term policy or practice changes resulting from the proposed research. This includes a strategy or plan that describes how the proposed research will embed research translation such that outputs are adapted into usable and appropriate products, policies, and practices. Number three, the application must address considerations and impacts of gender and its inclusion in all aspects of the project. Now let's talk about eligibility requirement for LASER applications. We will start with who is eligible to lead an application as a principal investigator or PI. First, the lead PI must be an academic researcher based at a higher education institution in the specified region or based in the United States. Lead researchers based in the United States must partner with a researcher and/or a practitioner in the specified region or country. Second, all applicants must be registered in the LASER PULSE network. The next requirement concerns completion of online training. Currently, LASER has 2 trainings. The first one is Introduction to Embedded Research Translation. The second one is Gender Analysis in Research and Application. Both trainings are required in order to submit an application. The PI and co-PI identified on the application must complete the trainings before the application is submitted. Last but not least is the requirement to submit a letter of interest. All applicants must submit a letter of interest 3 weeks before the application due date. The letter of interest will not be evaluated, but LASER will use them to plan for the review process. Please note that LASER will not accept applications that did not submit a letter of interest. This slide provides a snapshot of the application checklist, which is provided in the RFA as Appendix number 4. It contains the following information. Number 1, a completed full application, maximum 10 pages of core content, excluding cover page. Number 2, a work plan, maximum 2 pages. Number 3, detailed budget and budget narrative to explain all costs. Number 4, a curriculum vitae or CV for PI and co-PIs, maximum 2 pages each. Number 5, a signed letter or letters of commitment from each translation partner institution. And number 6, PI and co-PI certificates of completion for 2 LASER PULSE online trainings. That's Gender in Research and Application and Embedded Research Translation. Other team members of the application are encouraged to take these trainings. Please note that you are required to use the provided templates where applicable. In this next section, I will discuss common mistakes made in LASER PULSE applications. The mistakes are compiled from the previous RFAs administered by LASER. There are 6 parts in total. In each part, I will provide the application requirements and then highlight the common mistakes made under each requirement, and then go over the consequences of the mistakes. Part 1 of the common mistakes relates to the RFA sector selection and online training. So let's start with the sector selection. The requirement is such that the application must identify the sector of focus as described in the RFA. If the research is cutting across sectors, please identify the main sector. Common mistake is that there is failure to identify the sector of focus. The implication of this mistake is that the application could be placed in the wrong sector and receive lower ratings than if it were placed in the right sector. Another requirement is that the application must respond to the identified sector gaps. A common mistake is failure to identify the gap of focus. The implication of this mistake is that the application is outside the scope of the RFA, therefore it will not be evaluated. As for training-related mistakes, the requirement is such that the PI and co-PIs must take the required online trainings and submit their certificates together with the application. A common mistake made here is failure for PI and identified co-PIs to complete and to provide certificates for the online trainings. The implication of this mistake is that the applications will not be evaluated. Part 2 of the common mistakes is related to eligibility and the checklist that I have already mentioned as Appendix number 4. Under eligibility-related mistakes, First, the requirement is such that the principal investigator must be based at a higher education institution, unless exceptions are detailed in the RFA. Common mistake. The PI is based at an institution that is not a higher education institution. Examples are national research institutes or international research institutes. The implication of the mistake is that the application is not eligible for laser pulse RFAs. Regarding checklist-related mistakes, the requirement is that applications must include required documents listed in Appendix number 4 using the provided templates. There are two common mistakes. Number 1, application does not include all required documents. And number 2, the applicants do not use the provided templates. The implications of these mistakes are that the application will not be evaluated. Part 3 highlights common mistakes made under embedded research translation. First, let's start with the requirement. Applications must incorporate collaboration between researchers and translation partners. We have said time and time again that examples of translation partners are non-government organizations, community-based organizations, government entities, or private sector partners. A common mistake made is that some applications identify higher education institutions as translation partners. As we have said before, higher education institutions are not eligible as translation partners. The implication of this mistake is that the application will not be evaluated. Two other common mistakes under this theme are translation strategy or plan is not included. The second one is that translation partner roles are not described clearly. The implication of these two mistakes is that the application will receive low evaluation ratings. Part 4 concerns process-related mistakes. First, let's start with process-related requirements. These are available in Section 3 of the RFA titled Application Information and Process. Several mistakes related to these requirements are common. They include the following. Number 1, applications are not written in English. Number 2, applications do not include all supporting documents as described in Appendix number 4. Number 3, applicants do not use provided templates. The implication of these mistakes is that the application with process-related mistakes will not be evaluated. Another common mistake is that application materials exceed the page limit, currently set at 10 pages maximum of core content excluding cover page. The implication is that for applications that exceed set pages, LASER will evaluate pages of the application up to the set limit. Part 5 includes common mistakes under budget. The requirement is that each institution must have its own budget and budget justification using the templates provided. The common mistakes made under this is that PI and partner institution budgets are located in one template. The second one is that applicants utilize their own budget templates and not the ones provided. The third one is that budget justifications are not included. The implication of these mistakes is that applications with budget-related mistakes will not be evaluated. Part 6 focuses on common mistakes related to technical writing. In this slide, I will provide a list of warning signs for technical writing that is not strong. The signs are as follows. Number 1, the application has too much fluff or general language, and very little substance or details. Number 2, claims or statements are not backed by evidence or citations. In this case, it's important to provide citations for all facts stated in the application. Number 3, it's unclear how the research methodology will be implemented. For example, what tools will be used or what roles each partners have. So it's important to provide enough details to infer how the research will be executed. Number 4, text does not flow logically. In other words, the text refers to or requires content that is described later in the application. Number 5, inconsistency in terminology and contradictory statements. This one is self-explanatory. Number 6, figures, if used, have text that is too small compared to the main text, therefore is not legible. Or figures and table captions are not self-explanatory. Number 7, budget justification is cursory and does not provide a clear idea of exactly what the funds will be used for or how the budget line item relates to the proposed work. In this case, it's important to include all the formula in all the cells in the budget template so that it's clear how the budget has been calculated. In the next 2 slides, I will provide 5 characteristics of a strong and sound technical application. These characteristics should help applicants to tighten their applications. Please note that the issue is not about what is proposed, but it's about how it is written. We ask all applicants to pay attention to these characteristics and to fully incorporate them in the writing process so the resulting applications can be competitive. The first characteristic is for the application to be prepared with the target audience in mind. In this case, LASER PULSE reviewers are your main audience. The reviewers comprise of experienced researchers and practitioners from academic institutions, USAID, non-government organizations, and government institutions. Their technical specialty varies across sectors and topics. Therefore, they may not be experts in the applicant's specific topic. Instead, their role is to follow the RFA eligibility and selection criteria. With this background in mind, applicants should ensure that all technical materials are easily understood across different audiences. The second characteristic is that the application should flow well and be cohesive. This characteristic is about how ideas progress from one to another and how parts of the application fit together as a whole. This characteristic has a major effect on the reader's understanding of the application. The text should be well organized, make key points, and have convincing arguments. All acronyms should be defined at the first incidence. Proposed activities should clearly link back to the research motivation and research gaps. The third characteristic is about the application being clear and concise. The text should be simple and direct. Each paragraph should have a clear purpose. Figures should be used to communicate content that would take longer text. If figures are used, captions must be added and they should be clear and self-explanatory. The fourth characteristic requires the application to be logical. In other words, it should bear consistent terminology and avoid contradictory statements. Lastly, the application should be substantive, whereby claims are backed by evidence and citations. Enough details should be provided to infer the following: the knowledge gap, the research hypothesis and goals, the research methodology, and the roles of all partners. Also, the budget justification must clearly state how funds will be used. Finally, I would like to provide some hints that I hope will be helpful when preparing to write an application. First, it's important to read the RFA in its entirety before settling on your sector and sector gap focus. Second, be sure to read carefully the frequently asked questions. If you have additional questions, please send them during the question period, that is, before the RFA webinar date. Third, try to identify all partners, especially the translation partners, who include non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, government entities, or private sector enterprises. After you have settled with the partner of choice, be sure to clearly articulate their roles and responsibilities. The principal investigator and co-principal investigators should take the online training prior to writing the application. Researchers should work with the translation partners to identify the gaps or gap to be addressed and to develop the research questions. And that's all for this training. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all the best in preparing successful applications.